show of hands here. Who had a little bit of anxiety before getting up this morning, thinking about talking to humans before 8:30 in the morning? Yeah. Who had a little bit of anxiety when I asked you to raise your hands? Yeah. Anxiety is something that we all kind of deal with and feel, but it's not something that we often talk about. And thankfully, we have folks like Jenee Darden, who's an award-winning journalist, a public speaker, and a mental health advocate to help encourage those conversations to happen. So please help me give a warm welcome to Jenee Darden.
It's funny to talk about anxiety when you have to speak in front of a room of a lot of people. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Oakland. Yeah, I'm so happy to see you all. Thank you so much for coming this morning. Again, my name is Jenee Darden, and I'm born and raised in Oakland. I'm a journalist, as she said, a mental health advocate, writer, and I live with depression and anxiety. And I call anxiety my frenemy because sometimes it's more enemy than friend. I'll just say that. A lot of times it's hard for me, but sometimes it's helpful. I also call it my BOGO because a lot of people that have depression have anxiety, so it's like buy one, get one free. Hey, you might as well get 2 diagnoses, right? Why stop at 1? But I'm not alone. 1 in 5 Americans have a mental health challenge. How many people in here have a brain? All right. Some people haven't had coffee yet, so they're kind of like, I think I do. So I'm not alone. 1 in 5 Americans have a mental health challenge. And it's funny because there's so much stigma around it, even though a lot of us are suffering, and we're suffering silently. And it was funny because when I heard about this topic, before I was asked to speak, I was like, oh, I want to go and see what they have to say about that. So, and the reason why was because the last time I had an anxiety attack was actually the day after Christmas, this past Christmas. So I'm at home. It's the day after Christmas dinner. I made a small Christmas dinner, and all my deadlines, I had turned in my work. I had a lot of work to do that month. And so then I sit on the couch, I put a blanket on over me, and I look at the TV, and then I realize I have to make a really, really important decision. And I was like, do I watch Moana or do I watch Rogue One? So I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, okay, I need to make this decision. Who would have picked Moana? Yeah, okay. Rogue One? Okay. So I chose Rogue One. And so I'm making this, somebody said, woo. So I'm making this decision, and then so I'm starting up Netflix, and then I realize I'm getting tense, and then I'm getting shortness of breath, and my body's tightening, and I'm realizing I'm having an anxiety attack. And I hadn't had an anxiety attack in a very, very long time. So usually when I have an anxiety attack, I have to talk to myself and just tell myself, calm down, you're okay, you're safe, you're okay, calm down. And then I kind of do mindfulness, and I do a body scan where I'm laying there, and I'm just trying to be very present, trying to hear the cars on the street, trying to feel the air tickling my skin. So I was able to really, really, really calm down. And I went to my therapist a couple of days later, and I realized that the reason why I was having an anxiety attack was because I had lost my grandparents earlier that year, within 2 months apart. So my grandmother on my mother's side, my grandfather on my father's side, they passed away. And so Christmas was my grandmother's favorite holiday. And that day I was on the couch. Normally I'd be at my grandfather's house eating leftovers. So anxiety was kind of telling me something. So that's why I say sometimes anxiety can be a friend, even though it has a horrible way of telling me things. But just to let me know that grief I was trying to push down on those feelings, that it was something actually serious. Okay, so anxiety. We all have anxiety. What are things you have anxiety about? You can just yell it out. I know money, yes. Flying, I know my mother in the front, I'm gonna bust her out. She rolled her eyes, I bust you out, love you. But yes, flying, some people have anxiety about flying, job interviews, relationships, public speaking, yes. Yes, yes. So everybody have like all kind of, things about anxiety. But actually anxiety is normal. Anytime you have to face or make an important decision or something like that, or, have a job interview, that's normal. That's a part of life. There's all kind of symptoms to anxiety, which is why I don't like anxiety, because it's manifesting physically, like whatever kind of you're feeling. So, restlessness, rapid heart breathing, sweating, muscle tension, trouble sleeping, GI issues, avoiding whatever's going to trigger your anxiety. Those are some of the symptoms. But it can become an issue when you have those symptoms for prolonged time. Like I think it's maybe over 6 months or so. And then you have anxiety disorder. And actually, there's all different types of anxiety disorder: panic, phobias, social anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder. And again, it's something that's not totally uncommon. 18% of adults experience anxiety disorder in a year. And 31% of adults experience anxiety in their lifetime. It's actually one of the most common mental health challenges. And there's also a growing rate of it within youth. So I was reading an article that said that anxiety surpassed depression as one of the #1 health problems for college students. So we're seeing it grow. I started experiencing mental health issues when I was a freshman in high school. So that's me. Made my TLC inspired, because this was the 90s. That's right. What about your friends, right? So, so yes, baggy jeans, flannel. That was people who grew up in the 90s, know what I'm talking about. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And I think that was my senior year of high school. But anyway, so again, I'm an Oaktown girl. I like to say I grew up between Coliseum BART and Fruitvale BART Station. I went to school, St. Elizabeth High School, in the Fruitvale district. That's why I have Cholula hot sauce and Crystal's hot sauce in my cabinet, because I grew up in a Black and Latino neighborhood. So, and I carry those influences with me passionately. So I love Oakland. But again, I was having some issues. I had started high school, and change for me is hard. So learning about my mental health, I've learned that change for me is hard. I was starting high school. I had been bullied a lot in middle school, and so I was bringing that with me into high school, and then just getting adjusted to high school was a struggle. And so I started having depression. My mood was really low, and so my mother saw that something was happening, and she took me to therapy, and I started to get better. I still had a lot of shame, especially in the Black community. Sometimes we say, well, we went through so much that, how can you have depression? We survived the slave trade. We survived, civil rights injustices, all that kind of stuff. And then there's this pressure to be a strong Black woman, even at a young age. And then, too, just the things we say in society about mental health and the stigma. So I was carrying all that. So I didn't tell anybody I was going to a therapist. I just kind of held it in. So even though I was feeling better, just that stress from the stigma put a lot of weight on me. But I got therapy, things were getting better, and then something happened that I never thought would change my life.
Late Friday night, the camera flashed, and the picture revealed an exhausted O.J. Simpson. It wasn't a paparazzi photo, but a mug shot. The ex-football great, Heisman Trophy winner, commercial spokesperson, was booked on charges of murdering his ex-wife, Nicole Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman. It was a subdued ending to a frenzied day which started with a murder warrant, included a 75-mile chase on Los Angeles freeways, and ended with Simpson's surrender in the driveway of his Brentwood home. The man driving Simpson, his longtime friend, Al Cowlings, was himself arrested on a felony charge of aiding a fugitive. Cowlings posted bond and was released from jail early this morning, and today wouldn't talk to reporters.
House, all right?
Even though it was a police pursuit, hundreds of people lined the freeways as if gathered for a parade, cheering their hero. Simpson surrendered quietly. The reaction to the day-long drama was anything but.
It's almost like a movie unfolding, but it's real life.
I'm just sick about the whole thing. Who knows the real truth at this point in time? The public certainly does not.
Simpson's mother, Eunice, collapsed and was hospitalized in San Francisco after hearing his friend Robert Kardashian at a press conference yesterday, reading a letter Simpson reportedly wrote Friday.
I've had a great life, great friends.
Even after a week of leaked information by unnamed sources linking Simpson to the crime through bloody gloves, a ski mask, and blood types, there has been an outpouring of support for the former star athlete.
There are going to be some people, and we saw them last night, who simply do not want to believe that O.J. could have done such a thing.
But District Attorney Gil Garcetti will have to prove he did.
I'm going to stop right there. So, when that happened, when the whole Bronco thing, I was like sitting in my room and I looked, I was like, oh, that's crazy, and just went back to doing what I was doing. Had no idea, right? And I was living in Oakland. My father was living in LA, and then he ended up getting on the case. And I remember he called, I was at home, me and my mom, and we were in the kitchen. We had a landline. I know some people are like, what? So we had a landline, and my mom turned on the speaker or phone on the landline, and my dad called, and we were talking to him. He said, I got the case, and we were like, wow, like, because that was such a big deal, and we wished him luck, and we were excited for him. And I probably went back in my room and watched Yo MTV Raps probably after that. I was like, oh, that's cool, and just kept it moving, having no idea that it was going to just snowball into something crazy, basically. So my dad was in LA, we're up here in Oakland, and I'm getting calls from the paparazzi. I had my own phone and a pager. It was the 90s, right? So I thought I was doing something. So I'm getting calls from the paparazzi like, oh, hi, can you tell us about your dad? Give us some information. And I'm like, no. And I'm like slamming the phone down. And then they came to our neighborhood. And it's funny because, like I said, we lived in a Black and Latino neighborhood. So we were like seeing white guys with cameras. Like, what are they doing here in the neighborhood, right? And coming to our door, it was just really, really weird. And then they were harassing other people in our family. Of course, my dad was being followed. One of my uncle's ex-wife sold my winter ball picture to the tabloids. So, like, I went to school and I saw people lined up along the lockers, like, looking at the globe. It was crazy. And my dad, he had a hard time as far as how he was treated in the media. He also received death threats. And because of the racial division with the case, some people felt that my dad in the Black community has sold out. And I was very lucky because I went to a predominantly Black and brown high school, and so a lot of the students identified as far as and understood about racial discrimination within the legal system. And so a lot of them sided with the defense, but thankfully they would tell me, they said, I don't disagree with your dad's doing, but I'm gonna support you. So I was really thankful for that. And sometimes I would have panic attacks before I would go to school, like little anxiety attacks. And I don't know, I didn't know why at the time, but then now looking back, I was probably nervous going to school. So it's funny because some people are like, oh, that's so glamorous, like that your dad was on the case. And I was like, it really wasn't that fun. It wasn't glamorous, and it definitely wasn't something that we expected. And so my dad was like having a hard time, and after the trial, or actually during the trial, he would check in. He'd say, "Are you okay?" And I would say, "Yeah." And I probably kind of wasn't. And I would ask him, "He okay?" And he would say, "Yeah," and he wasn't. And so we didn't really have this discussion. And so after the trial is what I tell people is for me was when a new trial began, because you go through all of that stuff and seeing, tabloids and your family in tabloids and people saying crazy things to you. Because, people when people think somebody's famous, they can just say whatever they want. I'm so happy this didn't happen during social media age. Yeah, so when you go through something like that, then you have to deal with, how do I process all of that? And so me and my dad would like bump heads, and it affected our relationship. So then when I went to college, I went with this pain, because it was not long after I went to college and I moved to San Diego. So I went with this pain of having this strained relationship, trying to process everything that happened. And then I still have this shame about having anxiety and depression. And I would go and I went to school and I would have little kind of anxiety attacks every so often when I was at school. And so through my life, I just had to learn how to process all of these things. And I had these 3 pictures up because that's high school, that's my teens, the middle one's my 20s, and the last was my 30s. And so I carried all of this for a long time. And also, too, I didn't tell people about that I was related to my dad because I didn't know how people would react. And so when I was in college, I would sit in the dorms or people's apartments, and they would be talking about the trial and talking about my dad, and I'd just be sitting there like, Especially, too, you know, because you don't know. I remember I told one man, this one guy asked me, I was at Alameda College, I was taking a class, and he asked me, was I related to Chris Darden? And some told me, no, listen to that voice. I was like, no, and then he was like, if I saw him, I'd kill him. I mean, it was just crazy, right? So that's why I kept it to myself. So I had to go through a healing process, which included lots of therapy, and I'm still in therapy, and I love therapy, and I advocate for it. Prayer and meditation helps, especially with anxiety because your mind races, and learning how to be present. I had to accept I can't change the past. The past happened. There's nothing I can do, but I got to keep going forward. I accepted my depression and anxiety, especially working in mental health advocacy and meeting other people who were going through things like me. I realized that I was not alone and there's nothing weird about me and that I'm okay. I learned how to understand how my mind works as far as talking to my therapist and doing research and going to classes and learning about mental health, which helped also me not to be ashamed. And then I just recognized when anxiety, even though, like I said, it's more enemy than friend when it comes in handy. So like I'm a journalist, so I'm really anxious about making sure that I have my facts right. Facts, yeah. That's been a big word lately. And then too, just having a lot of hope, right? Having a lot of hope that I'll be okay, having a lot of hope that I have support, that I can take care of myself and have people to help me take care of myself. Also, that does help with healing is having a hit miniseries that humanizes your father. So if you're lucky to experience that, that can be a healing thing. Sterling K. Brown did such a beautiful job playing my father. And it was funny. I would get emails from people they would say, I want to apologize for everything I said about you. I don't even know these people. And they're like, I'm so sorry for the things I said. And I got emails from people that said, I still side with the defense, but I look at your father differently and I have more respect for him. So that actually allowed me to kind of come out and share my story. Okay, so when anxiety comes, and we all experience anxiety, these are some of the things I ask myself. Is it that serious? Like, is it the end of the world, right? Because sometimes with anxiety and even with depression, sometimes you have to kind of change your thoughts because your mind is telling you different things. Is there a solution to this? Maybe you're really anxious about a problem and the answer might be in front of you. I know that's happened. Is it out of your control? Some things you can't control, so there may be nothing you can really do about that. And sometimes there's a freedom in knowing that, something's out of my control and I can't control the situation, but I can control how I look at it. Do you need help or assistance? Maybe you're having a problem, you're trying to make a big decision, and maybe just calling someone who's an expert that you know of or a friend may help you make that decision. Do you need, what are the tools to help you get through this? Maybe it's a resource, maybe it's a meditation because you're anxious. Have you overcome worse? Sometimes things happen in our lives and we're very anxious and we forget that we've been through this before or maybe been through something worse before, and then we can remind ourselves, you know what, I can overcome this. Did you forget how great you are? Sometimes you may be nervous about a job interview, and then you have to remind yourself, you know what, I had a job interview before and I got hired. And so I might get hired again, And then I'm like, is it worse than Steve Harvey's era at the Miss Universe pageant? And the reason why I say that is because that was so humiliating, right? Like in front of the whole world to make, and I know it was issues about, who made the mistake, but the fact that he said the wrong name, and then they had to take the crown away and all that kind of stuff. And then all the memes and the jokes and, and I was like, that was embarrassing. But you know what? Steve Harvey is still getting gigs, right? So that's why I say, could it be worse than that? See, I find inspiration from all kind of places. So you want to take care of yourself. And so again, I asked if people had a brain in their head. So we all should be taking care of our mental health just like we take care of our hearts, just like we take care of our teeth, just like we take care of our bodies, because mental health is your health. So talk to a therapist or a friend. Make changes in your life to ease anxiety. I had a job that was very toxic, and when I would drive there one time, I had a panic attack. And so that was anxiety telling me, girl, you need to get another job because it's stressing you out. So I made those changes and got better opportunities. Maybe you need to unplug from social media. There's someone in power who's on Twitter that's been making people very anxious lately. So maybe you need to take a break from that, or take a break just from other things in your life. And think of wellness tools to get you through. I'm gonna, again, bust out my mother lovingly, because she's afraid to fly. And so when we flew to Vegas, what I did was that I brought my MP3 player and had Zen music on it to make her relax. So think of wellness tools for when you're feeling anxious. Talk to yourself positively. That's what I did, like kind of how I mentioned in the beginning. And just remember, this too shall pass. And one of my mothers, she always gives me this advice: don't let anyone risk space in your head. Right? So sometimes you caught up in what people are thinking about you, and especially right now in this social media age. And sometimes you have to just evict people out your mind so you can have some peace of mind. And then also, too, take care of each other, especially now. There's so much going on. Make sure that you're calling people, not just texting, but actually just picking up the phone and calling people, making sure you check up on your family and friends, visit with them. Trade ideas on wellness tools. My friend Kalechi here, who's also a mental health advocate, I'm busting her out, too. Sometimes we'll call, she may refer me to, maybe this is a good therapist you can talk to, or maybe this is a good meditation place to go to. So those are ways you can support each other too through your mental health. Just don't be ashamed again. So I started with Star Wars, and I'm gonna end with Star Wars. Our General Princess Leia, our late General Princess Leia, was Carrie Fisher. She was a mental health advocate. And she would talk about just how there was so much stigma, right? And again, I think one thing about mental health stigma is that people with mental health issues are weak. And she said at times, she lived with bipolar disorder. And she said at times being bipolar can be an all-consuming challenge. And I think this applies to other mental health challenges. And it requires a lot of stamina and even more courage. So if you're living with this illness and functioning at all, it's something to be proud of and not ashamed of. They should issue medals along with a steady stream of medication. And so, I think for anyone, even if for maybe somebody's dealing with depression, even just the fact that you got up out of bed this morning, even if you're depressed or something, and you got up just to brush your teeth, because sometimes it gets hard like that, or you have social anxiety and you made it here to talk to people, and that's not that's not easy for you, pat yourself on the back, because this is not an easy thing to live with. It's a challenge every day, but those of us who have it, we keep pushing. And just remember, 1 in 5 people, so somebody who has a mental health challenge. You may not even know that they have it, but it's very, very common. And so I'd give these talks because I don't want people to suffer alone, because a lot of people have, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. And just remember, it'll be okay. And you can find me at cocofly.com. I also, if you want to sign up for my newsletter, you can go online and do that, or at the registration desk. And I also have a podcast up on my website about anxiety. So thank you.
Yeah.